President Trump's son, Eric, is one of the leaders of the Trump Organization, the family business, and he also has run a yearly charity golf tournament through the nonprofit Eric Trump Foundation. And that golf tournament is at the Trump National Golf Club in Westchester County, New York, and it's to benefit children's cancer research. Now, the tournament has laudably raised millions for the cause, thanks in part to Eric Trump's claim that nearly all the money contributed goes directly to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. And that is possible, he long maintained, because, well, there's virtually no overhead. Entertainment, drinks, most of the other costs to conduct the tournament were donated, as was, crucially, the use of the golf club itself, which, of course, just happens to be owned by Eric's father, the President of the United States. At least that was Eric Trump's story, but as Forbes reports, it isn't true. Now, I should note here that for the first 4 years of the tournament, things looked pretty good. From 2007 to 2010, annual costs were only about $50,000 per year, but in 2011, costs shot up to $142,000, and with the exception of 2012, they just kept growing. By 2015, the most recent year on record, costs for the tournament were all the way up to $322,000. So what happened? Well, the former membership and marketing director at the Trump Golf Club told Forbes that when Donald Trump himself found out about the tournament's finances, he, quote, had a cow. He flipped. He was like, we're donating all this stuff and there's no paper trail, no credit. And he went nuts. He said, I don't care if it's my son or not, everybody gets billed. And Eric Trump did get billed quite a bit. Forbes reports that via the charity tournament, the Trump Organization, that's the family for-profit business, received more than $1.2 million that has no documented recipients past the Trump Org. Additionally, the Donald J. Trump Foundation apparently used the Eric Trump Foundation to funnel $100,000 in donations into revenue for the Trump Organization. And while donors to the Eric Trump Foundation were told their money was going to help sick kids, more than $500,000 was redonated to other charities, many of which were connected to Trump family members or interests. Joining me now, Olivia Nuzzi, Washington correspondent for New York Magazine, Pulitzer Prize winning Daily Beast columnist David Cay Johnston, author of the book The Making of Donald Trump. David, let me start with you as an expert on tax law. You know, I imagine there's possibly an explanation for this that could be provided by the foundation, but on its face, this looks to violate the law?
Yes, this is what's known as self-dealing. Good as it is that the Eric Trump Foundation provided this money to St. Jude, they would have gotten about 15% more, but for the money that went to the Trump Organization, and we don't know if it went beyond there, and that went to other charities that seem to have business ties and help develop business for the Trump Organization. And I'm floored that one year the costs were over $300,000. I've been involved as a trustee of a charity and a board member of a charity with a number of entities where I've had to oversee or examine the finances, and I just can't understand how you could spend $300,000 on the costs of a golf tournament.
Right, and let's just to be clear, that's money that's being paid to the golf club, which is the Trump Org.
Right.
And also, one more thing, David, I want to just continue on this, because the Forbes reporting suggests that when there's a change in the board, originally it's Eric Trump and his friends, and the costs are low, and they're getting this deal, and then it becomes Trump Organization members on the nonprofit foundation board who appear to be kind of representing both interests simultaneously.
Right. The board members had, a majority of the board had clear conflicts of interest in what was going on, which Forbes lays out quite well here. And there's a reason that we have what are called public charities. The idea of a public charity is that no individual or family is in control, and therefore we ease up on the restrictions on them.
Right.
When you clearly have someone in control, you have what's called a private foundation with tougher rules, because we know people, and the Trumps in particular, tend to put their hand in the charity cookie jar.
All right, so that's one place where you see money flowing in, and this is before he became president. Now, Olivia, I want to go to this story. This is the Saudis spent $270,000 at the Trump Hotel in a lobbying campaign against that 9/11 bill, which is about whether they would have financial exposure through civil litigation. You've been reporting a lot from that hotel, which has become essentially this kind of like favor trading mecca in Trump's D.C.
Right. I was there, I think it was the night that Donald Trump fired James Comey, and Rudy Giuliani was there. He smelled like a cigar, and he was there very late at night when the bar was closing, and he was just hanging out. I've seen lots of people, you know, who are close to the president or associated with the president hanging out there. It is a place, clearly, where people are trying to trade favors and trying to exert influence over the Trump administration, and any claims to the contrary just seem completely absurd. And I would also point to the earlier story about Eric Trump's foundation. There is a great irony in Donald Trump saying that people need to get paid when he is someone who is known historically for stiffing contractors who have worked on projects for him.
Yeah, and the idea that he basically, I mean, the sort of between the lines image you get from that Forbes piece is a recognition like, oh, we can extract some money out of this enterprise, and it goes up year after year after year. Olivia, you also have the brothers who running the Trump organization who are walled off in some completely impossible to tell way from the actual president, doing a lot of publicity, and now floating a budget-friendly with America Idea hotel chain, which again seems like, frankly, essentially profiting off their father being president.
Right. It just seems like there is something not right about it, even if it would be technically legal, and I can't speak to that. I think it just seems like there's something not right about it. You have to ask at some point, you know, are these people, is the Trump family, are they trying to make America better? Are they working for the country, or are they working for themselves and for their own brand? And I think increasingly it looks like the latter.
I should note that the plan here is essentially, David, Trump-branded hotels in the parts of the country the president did well in, the sort of heart of Red America, a budget line that's America and America-themed, but also seems like clearly manifestly a conflict, although again, we continue to be in the terrain of the president asserts the president cannot have a conflict of interest.
Well, Trump Inc. and the White House seem to be basically the same thing. I mean, I'm not the least bit surprised that the Trumps don't see any bright lines or any lines at all between their financial interests and duty to country. That's just simply not how the Trumps think. Fiduciary duty, a duty of loyalty, is a one-way street in the Trump organization. You have to give absolute loyalty to Donald Trump. He owes no loyalty to anybody else, and I would argue the evidence is showing increasingly not even to his bosses, the American voters.
All right, Olivia Nuzzi and David K. Johnson, thanks to you both. Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.